Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button, Season 4, Episode 30. I am your host, Alejandro, and this time, Paul takes a week off to go take care of his baby, and I get frequent guest star now for the show, Mr. Game Positive YouTube / Eric Bezanson. How are you doing, Eric?
Hey, what's going on? I'm doing great. Just give a little warning to video listeners. I'm going to be muting and coughing a lot because I have a really weird sore throat. It's back to school for my kiddos, and they just, of course, they bring home the plague every time they go there. So bear with me, but I think it should be a good show otherwise.
Oh, yeah. And hopefully it's not COVID, since COVID is kind of like exploding again for some reason. But, well, it never went away. Yeah. It just, people just stopped caring. But, hey, it's like the life just keeps on going. We're now in September. It's wild how fast just the year suddenly went after like a relatively both quick and slow summer, I feel like, especially with things that shall remain nameless that happened to me that I kind of told you about when we're chatting. But yeah, we're back here and still gonna try to keep the new tight window that I got the show going over the last 2 weeks, because I'm in the middle of a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth challenge in the very last round. It's staring at me right now, but I'm taking a little break so I can decompress myself here with Eric before I go reattempt that. But I can talk more about that in a little bit. But this is a reminder that this is the X Bottom Podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Fridays from 10 a.m. onwards, God willing, available on the YouTube channel Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at tinyurl.com/escapegaming. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. So, Eric, lots of games have been like, we're now in that season where there's a lot to play. So tell us, what have you been playing recently? With the exception of one thing that we're going to say per topic.
Yeah, well, I'm not playing that actually, the one that you're referring to. But yeah, I mean, I'm like at the very end of V Rising, and I don't know if I talked about this on your show before, but I accidentally. Okay, so when I'm doing some coverage on V Rising, and I joined a server. I wasn't really paying attention to what it was telling me. I just clicked on one, and I had played early access, and this is like the 1.0, and I was like, oh, they kind of made it a little bit more difficult in the 1.0. That's cool. And by the time I got to end of Act 1, I was like, why I can barely beat any of this. And then I realized I chose what's called a brutal server, which is like the hardest possible difficulty you could.
Of course, you're on difficulty. Like, well, you always picking the hardest.
This was accidental. This was not intentional, because I wouldn't have actually picked this, because like when you put it on this mode, yeah, it's harder, but it's harder in the sense that they want you to like play with other people. Like it's not soloable, especially as you get towards the end. And unfortunately, my server is just kind of like slowly dying. And I'm at the very end. I have a couple bosses that I need to beat in order to get the proper armor in order to take on Dracula, which is like the hardest thing in the game. And I'm almost there, so that I'm like tough enough or powerful enough to fight him, but I'm gonna need to find like 3 other people, which is going to be a challenge, but I really want to finish that, get the platinum. I've been playing Halo on the custom game nights in Halo. That's a weekly thing that never stops. World of Warcraft War Within, just kind of making my way through that. It's a really, really good expansion, and I think that's that's pretty much it.
So real quick with Warcraft, with what you played of War Within, where is it landing on the pantheon of Warcraft expansions, which there are like almost 20 of them at this point? Obviously kidding, but it probably is close to that, right?
How many is there?
Yeah.
Well, there's Vanilla, then there's Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm, Mists of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, Legion, Battle for Azeroth, Shadowkeep, and Dragonflight. So 10, and now this 10, or this is 10 because I included the base game there. So I think this is 10, which every 2 years is an expansion, and we're in year 20 this is the 20th anniversary, I think, of WoW this October, and the 30th anniversary of Warcraft. Like if you go back to the RTS, so. Pretty long in the tooth, but it's really hard to answer that question because I'm just still in the questing phase. I would say, in terms of just basically the loop is you quest through a story, that kind of sets in motion the events that will take place over the expansion.
Mhm.
And then once you get to the end, that's where like the new systems start coming into play, the raids, the higher tier dungeons, all the different end game stuff, and PvP. I would say from a questing perspective, this is probably Jesus, this is probably, without having been at the end of got to the end of the story yet, which could definitely change things, I would say it's like the third best. I think the questing in Warlords of Draenor and the questing in Legion was stronger, but I will say the end game in Warlords of Draenor was not good. So the overall expansion was I don't consider that one of the better ones. And Legion is probably the best expansion that I've played because I didn't start until around Cataclysm.
Yeah,
so
Legion was 2013, right? Or like around that time, I think.
Around that time, yeah.
Yes, because I remember that's when I was in college, and that's when I realized that people were still playing WoW because people that were in my college were playing it, like in the dorms. So I was like, oh, that game's
even when
still
it was
alive.
like even when it was like dead, which I would say it would be like 2017, 2018 was like a really low point. It was still probably the either first or second most played MMO. And then when Classic came out, it just like rocket fuel for that. Those two expansions though, specifically, like the two kind of main features were really tied into the campaign, which I think is what makes the campaign better. I won't get into the weeds because no one listening probably gives a shit about World of Warcraft. But
but that's why I wanted to at least mention it, because obviously I don't play PC games like most, and obviously that's still just a PC only thing, despite me still hoping, crossing fingers that
and the baits they've been doing. The showcase baited me so hard.
And whatchamacallit, the Jeff Keighley's opening night live also, when they were there doing all the announcements they were gonna do in WoW, it also felt because everything was like so muted. It's like, are they building for the punchline now? Like for the gut punch, like now console version. It feels like that's like the next big huge pop for that thing, even though it feels like Warcraft now is like in a better spot. Because I remember 2020, 2021 when that was like at its worst, around the time of like the whole lawsuit thing. I feel, and everyone like departing for Final Fantasy 14, which was just getting to Endwalker, which is which was kind of like the high point, like 10-year conclusion of that MMO at that point. So it's like I'm crossing fingers still. Crossing fingers.
Well, I mean, the 2 expansions to go, Shadowkeep, they added like official controller support. It used to be a mod, now it's officially in the game. They have all the iconography for PlayStation, Xbox controllers in the game files. Like, it's something that is, you can play it right now on the Steam Deck, fully functional, with controller and like thumbstick, everything. Like they retool the interface and how you like target, and it works perfectly. Like, guy at my office, pretty much 80% of the time he plays it's on a Steam Deck. So I think the thing that's holding them back is if you add an Xbox, you have to add a PlayStation, and then that's like 2 more things of support. And they've already do so much with Classic WoW, Season of Discovery, like the Classic Plus WoW, plus Retail WoW, and PTRs, and it's just there's a lot there.
Plus they have console over and whatchamacallit for Diablo and Overwatch anyway. So it's like, at least there's still some Blizzard games on console. So it's just WoW, the older one, that's still kind of like still there in the hope, especially with the new acquisition. I remain hopeful, because as soon as that happens, I'm gonna go in. I'm totally gonna go in. That's always, I remember when WoW was a thing back in 2004, and me being reading it in Game Informer, RIP, reading, like seeing it in like IGN, like all these things, and be like, it's PC, and it's like, that's not for me. So it's like it's always been one of those like gaming, I know you, I acknowledge you, I know you're big, it's just I haven't been able to touch you. So
I always, ever since I seen it, I wanted to play it, but my parents made me choose either World of Warcraft or Xbox Live, and I Halo won. So I didn't really, like I said, I didn't start playing it until
that was your butterfly back then.
Probably 2010 or something like that. 2009, 2010. Yeah.
Right around the peak, or like the new, or like at least that one
right around the decline. Right when it started going down is when I jumped in. That's when I got a credit card and I could pay my own subscription fee or whatever. But yeah.
Oh yeah. So I've been playing quite a few things. I kind of have been like rotating, especially after finishing the Star Wars Outlaws review that everyone can go read over at Season Gaming, and also watch the video review that I captured footage and was narrated by our EIC Ains over at seasongaming.com, because it was going to be my first video review, and we're like so down the clock, you needed to do the VO. The next one we do, I'm going to do the VO so I can get practice going, but at least the footage turned out good. So I've been like rotating between Visions of Mana Black Myth Wukong, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth still, because Rebirth has just been basically, I've treated Rebirth as my life service this year after I said goodbye to Destiny after its great campaign conclusion, and it's been like, what is the thing that I can kind of keep playing and kind of go back to, and for some reason, because I want that platinum trophy for Rebirth, which would be my platinum number 69, because it's like, I just want that to be so, like, for a game that has like so royally fucked me in its difficulty for so long, it being platinum number 69 would be very fitting, and I kind of want to just get there, especially because we get a new game's releasing literally in a few hours that for all intents and purposes is an easy platinum, so I kind of want to get this one to make that platinum number 70. But it's like, I've gotten so far in. I have played this game for 317 hours. Obviously a lot of those I've been idling, because I love the music. Yeah, but it's like, I played it for that long because I also beat it 3 times, because I did my review run, I did the 100% run, then I did a dynamic difficulty run because I kind of wanted to test, let me see how this, like, because I've told you that hard mode, just like 16, is like, their hard mode unlocks after completion, similar to Remake, but they added dynamic difficulty that is like, if hard mode is like an extreme mode, the dynamic difficulty is like a hard mode that scales. And I kind of wanted to test that as I was grinding out some materia that I was going to use for the normal hard mode. So I just kind of being like, this game I've been playing this since like February. I went through a move. I'm still playing it. I'm 3 trophies away from finishing it. And this has been my I'm done and I'm so back game for literally the last month, where I keep texting Paul, my buddy Paul, and my friend Zach, when I'm like, I feel this is the thing that's breaking me. I don't think, and then I do the thing that I always do with Dark Souls. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna go back in. I'm just taking a little brief. I'm gonna go back in, and then I make that breakthrough. If those breakthroughs, it wouldn't stop, like, keep happening, I wouldn't keep playing. And I only have one more legendary challenge called Bonds of Friendship. You can like look it up online. Just with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Bonds of Friendship is like notorious. This is a notoriously the challenge that made people that love this game hate this game. Basically, is that kind of challenge. So, but I'm literally at the last round, and then we needed to record. So I feel hopefully this is kind of giving me that decompression, because you have to kind of like slow walk it with what you have to do in that challenge. So getting close. But then Black Myth Wukong, damn, do you hear that?
No.
Oh, thank God. It was like it was my apartment bell. I was like, damn, that's stronger than I was thinking about it. Hopefully it didn't come through. Like, so Black Myth Wukong, I reached chapter 2 days ago, because I know Ains has been he has been slowly playing. He has been posting on Twitter, like he reached like some really cool looking place, and also the algorithm has been putting me some really cool stuff about that game that I'm like, I kind of want to see that, because the first area of that, like the beginning of Wukong's great. I love it. It's like a great spectacle, kind of like throws you in and teaches you on the fly. It's like, okay, so this is like this kind of game. Looks like a Souls game, but it's like faster, more aggressive, all about dodging. And then it kind of puts you in a very linear path. And like, if you like exploration, it's like the exploration of this game is pretty frustrating, because you are a monkey man that feels like you should be able to jump this thing, but there's like an invisible wall. So it's like a fairly linear experience that doesn't look like one. So that first area is kind of frustrating. And there's like a lopsided nature to these bosses are really easy. Hey, these bosses, the equivalent of the Tree Sentinel over at Elden Ring, is like this super giant blue baby that can be hard, but then you can easily skip and just keep on going. If you want to just go torture yourself, you can go back. And he has a really cool upgrade if you actually manage to beat him. And it not having the punishment of a Souls game, where he's like, yeah, you can keep killing yourself, but XP always keeps like filling up, is the thing that kind of keeps this game in the rotation. Because after Earth Tree, after Stellar Blade, which wasn't quite a Souls-like, but was kind of similar to this, in that it looks like one, but does something unique, I was like, do I really want another one of these right now? But the visual quality of it, kind of like the aggressiveness of the combat, kind of still keeps me in the rotation. And the second world is awesome. There's something about deserts that they can make a game, like, especially for you Unreal Engine 5, this feels like one of those, let us show you what this engine can do with like all of this cranked up, even though I know the PC version is significantly better than the PS5 version. We're gonna talk about that, another console for that game in a second. But yeah, I'm still gonna see if I'm gonna keep that kind of going. I know we have 2 games are coming out really soon. One came out today in early access, and also tomorrow it's this other one. So I'm like, man, there's so much I want to keep playing. I want to see if I can keep all of this in rotation. And then I've been briefly playing Visions of Mana because I love me my Square Enix quirky JRPGs, and that one was an action RPG, and I kind of wanted to see it. And its art style was like pretty appealing. So far, I'm still like pretty early, and I like the vibe a lot. I'm have questions about like the viability of the gameplay depth. My buddy Paul was telling me that he was kind of surprised that the gameplay depth of that one was not evolving as much as he was hoping it was going to, because he's a big Kingdom Hearts fan. So he's used to that game kind of like progressively making itself more deeper, despite seeming pretty simple early on. And kind of Mana has that feeling, but it feels like the simplicity remains for longer. So I'm like, I'll definitely check you out, but I definitely want to play Platinum Rebirth first, get this done before I do that. And yeah, so that's been pretty much kind of like what we've been playing. There was another thing that we're playing that I kind of wanted to save for a topic, because this was wild how we were playing it one night. We're having just long conversations of just about kind of like a podcast episode, and I was like, hey, we should record some, and then this thing happened in the morning after. But before we get to that, let's get to this week's topics, Eric, because no more news. We don't do it kind of like as time for news anymore. It's like all news are presented as topics, basically. So since August, one of these topics kind of both of these lumped together. So like Xbox's ongoing issue with losing out on third-party games, either via money hiding by Sony, technical issues, or like problems with publishing. Basically, it's kind of like, it's been like a three-pronged targeted assault that has prevented them from getting a bunch of these games. And this week was kind of like an example of us learning the things that are being the reasons why they're losing on the on access of those things, and then kind of getting a little glimmer of hope at seeing at least two versions of that kind of get fixed, one with the Marvel vs. Capcom thing, and then with another game called Inatra. But Eric, like with this whole thing with what's even your thought of seeing Xbox kind of like being always put into this situation where either in one of these three ways they keep on losing on games? So go for it.
Yeah. I think that the money hatting thing that happens with some games is a shame. I don't think it. I think I talked about. I can't remember what I said where, but I've said before that I don't think the money hatting is very beneficial to Sony. At least I think that I think it used to be like in the 90s and early 2000s when you had things like Final Fantasy X like not coming on Xbox or any JRPG.
When you'd have no first party studios, basically, so they needed to kind of pay for the games that were going to be exclusive to their platform.
Exactly. But now, like, especially after the PS4 generation, like I think that generation was kind of, and Xbox One obviously, I think that is what really made it not useful at all. So when, like, if we just throw a number out there, like let's say like Sony paid Bluebird Team, I don't know, $10 million to get Silent Hill, or not Bluebird Team, but Konami, to make it so it doesn't come on Xbox. Konami gets $10 million. Good for them. Sony loses $10 million. I don't believe that they gain very many sales from that. Unless it's
a smash hit, basically.
Well, you have to think like, okay, like this is the thing, right? So the amount, what percentage do you think of console gamers have both consoles and like can just and are going to buy Silent Hill 2? Like the majority of people that have a gaming device, like a expensive one, like a new gen console, like a PS5 or a Series X, especially in today's economy where they have not been discounted at all. In most places, they've actually increased in price. Yeah. Most people have one. Most people have their digital libraries attached to one, even if they have two. Like they have a main and then they use the other one for exclusives. And they've already made up their mind before the game was even announced where they're going to buy it. So Sony is not convincing. Like, I'm sure there's like some people who will, but Sony's not convincing Xbox players who also have a PS5, which is a low number already. They're not convincing them really to buy this game on this instead of that very often. Like, I'm not buying Silent Hill on PS5 because I have every Silent Hill that like my whole Silent Hill collection is on Xbox through original Xbox to 360, the remasters and stuff like that. So I'll just wait to 12 months because it's not a game that's like going to completely change my life or anything like that. It's just a nice to have. And whatever they paid, they didn't gain anything. And if you look at something like Spider-Man where they're paying for DLC, no one won. The only people that benefited from that was Marvel. because they got a check. Square Enix lost because the game got a lot of heat for it. The developers lost because they had to put up with so much bullshit because of that. Sony did not gain people. I bought the collector edition on Xbox. All my friends bought it on Xbox. We already knew where we were buying it, and this isn't going to change. Like at the end, they ruined the game because Spider-Man couldn't be a big part of it because it wasn't on.
Yeah, they couldn't make it a big expansion. That could have probably gave it more heat around the time that when they finally put that character in the game, when a movie was coming out. They completely missed out on the entirety of the of a bigger pub that they could have had, but because it was and they had to put the minimum effort because they couldn't make it substantial, and then it was like yep, that was the end.
Very similar to what they did with Destiny. Like those strikes couldn't be nightfalls, those exotics couldn't go to zero. Like money hatting is not benefiting anybody except the person who gets the money, and the people who benefit the least are usually the gamers. Like Xbox gamers can't buy Silent Hill, or Xbox gamers can't buy whatever they're doing, right? So I think the money hatting thing is stupid. I don't think Sony benefits from it at all. I think it's a waste of money for them, and I think they should probably stop doing it. But that's just like one category. I think that the category of games that skip Xbox because their like publishing department is not responding to emails is ridiculous.
Yes.
Now but this is like, I am not a conspiracy theorist. I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but if you look at these situations, they are very weird because you have like that. I can't remember the name of it, but there was that Metroidvania title that was like
HAAK, Hack, I think it was called.
Yeah. So that was I think
because of that.
Yeah, that was like the second time I've seen this. The first time I've seen this, I don't know if you remember this game called Quantum Error.
Yes, the exclusive, the one that ended up being exclusive was really bad.
Yeah, so both of those games those are games that no one would have ever heard of, right? They're just like very, very small games that as soon as they launched, they would have gotten buried in the algorithm. They would have gotten buried in the storefront. No one would have seen them. That they're small teams with no exposure, right? And as soon as they start talking shit about Xbox, they suddenly get put in all kinds of articles on the biggest platforms in the world, IGN. They start gaining so much like attraction from media outlets. It's just like they probably, like if you look at something like Hack, that game probably got like $100,000 worth of free marketing or more. I don't know the exact numbers, but a shit ton, way more marketing than they could have afforded with whatever budget they had for the game. And then when you look at something like Quantum Error, nothing that game does is impossible to do on the Xbox. That was a complete lie, everything he said. And the game was like...
It was pretty bad. It was really
pretty bad, I would say. Yeah. Hack, Xbox immediately reached out to this person and said, we'll do everything we can to get this game on Xbox. I don't understand why these problems are happening. And then the developer's like, nah, I don't want it on Xbox. So like... how genuinely was he really trying to get this on Xbox? And then if you look at this this other game, Inatria, there's a post that they made in their own Discord saying that they don't want to put it on Xbox because they don't want to spread their team too thin, and they can't support this many platforms at launch because they would rather, this is like a pretty much exact quote from them. I can't remember the exact words, but he said something along the lines of, I'd rather have 2 good games, meaning PlayStation and PC, than 3 okay games. And we can't spread ourselves too thin. And then all of a sudden, right before the game comes out, right when they really need the marketing push, they start talking about how Xbox is trash and they're like, it's possible to work with. Like, and then what happens? IGN reports on it, Windows Central reports on it, Eurogamer report, and it's just like, I don't know. You have to look at who stands to benefit the most from this. And who stands to benefit the least from this. And I think that like, I don't know, I can't definitively say what's happening because I don't know. I'm just presenting all the facts. I think it's awesome, even though it shouldn't never have to happen, but I think it's awesome sorry that Phil Spencer got involved and got this moving forward. But yeah, there's just like suspicious things happening with that aspect. And I do feel like, as somebody who is like kind of a fan of Xbox, and you can say I'm biased or whatever, I don't really care, but I do feel like there are situations where trashing Xbox is being exploited as a like a marketing opportunity, and I think that's trash. I think that's absolute trash, and I don't think that's what Wukong has done. And I think that the games that have done that have not ended up being great games and not games that really deserve this much attention. If I'm being blunt, I don't like to trash on games generally speaking, but I think especially with Quantum Error, that was just garbage.
Yeah, and he literally was just console warring. He was basically like making it kind of like some sort of way to kind of like trash the capability of the Xbox Series X system, which obviously we have seen many times where people have said it. Like we saw it with Baldur's Gate 3, but it wasn't much the Series X problem as much as kind of like just trying to make it work on the Series S because of the whole parity thing. And that was probably one of the biggest highest profile kind of like misses of, man, it's like you can like really have the foresight of like waiving it so quickly because you were gonna miss out on this game at the peak of its zeitgeist. So that was like the first time I saw, okay, there's some problems with the Series S, and obviously some problems that we've heard from some developers being like, man, it's a big kind of pain in the ass. And even I didn't even put it here, but also the Dune Awakening developers around the same time we were hearing that Inotcher was skipping Xbox because of and before we learned it was the publishing problem. Then the Dune Awakening guys were like, yeah, we're glad we're gonna be on PC, but when we're on consoles, man, like that, us having to do the Series S optimization is gonna be really rough. So I don't know if we're gonna make it. So
yeah,
like,
that
it was basically all adding all this like bad PR that had precedent that was legit before, and then it's like, man, is it like a pylon? Is it like real issues that maybe are not as big issues if you put more money and thought into things, and it just kind of compounds because Xbox at the end of the day is kind of like on third place and it's an easy punching bag. So that's kind of like what I find weird about that. I feel there's like there's truths and exaggerations in almost all those different angles whenever you look at them.
And I think things get like the Dune Awakening thing. I think that's a developer who doesn't have media training. Like if he did, he probably wouldn't have said that, because he I guarantee you he didn't mean to throw Series S under the bus. He probably just was talking to this person as if he was talking to another developer, because there's a lot of things that are challenges when you're obviously making a game. And the Series S is probably going to have a version of Dune Awakening that's going to run at a lower spec than the other ones, just like there's going to be PCs that run the game at a lower spec than some PCs. I would be very shocked if the minimum requirement for the PC version was a higher spec than what the Series S can do. I just don't think that. I think that comment in itself was taken, it was kind of run with a little bit too much. But there is this like era or aura of like this kind of like the Xbox is not as capable or whatever, and I think people see that, and I think some people exploit it. I think things like the Baldur's Gate thing was completely reasonable. I think that it's a weird situation. Microsoft really needs to kind of stand their ground on
parity,
trying to keep parity between them, but at the same time, like, this is like the game of the year and it's just not working out. And I think that in that instance, I don't know, it's just really tough, because as soon as you do that, you break the seal, right? And now that's something that's an option for any game, because there are definitely things where a developer would be like, it's going to take us X amount of time to make this work on Series S. I bet you that Series S will make up a very small fraction of our sales on Xbox. Do we really want to make this work on Series S when we can just make it a Series X feature? And then Microsoft doesn't want that to happen often, especially if the rumors of the handheld are true, which is going to be modeled after the Series S in terms of its performance profile. They want everything to kind of function. So I don't know, that in and of itself is a weird situation. I think a lot of the other stuff that's happening though is really sketch.
Yeah, it's like even though the whole thing with Wukong, which is like sketching like so many different levels, because it also kind of like looking at it as like an exclusivity deal was like struck. It is also really weird in the sense that I play on PlayStation and I see how they like promote things that they put money on and money had and all that. It's like really strange that there is an exclusivity deal going for this one, and they had never, since that game has been revealed, ever really promoted other than just in general, because all the channels have like general trailers for games that are coming in their system, but they either push it like if they have exclusive deals and something. Like if you look at what PlayStation just did for the China Hero project, where they actually went in and they had like a little convention for Chinese people to come play the games. They had everything, including RIP Concord. We're going to talk about that later, about Wukong, before Wukong even came out. And I know there was like the thing when they announced that it was skipping Xbox was because they're of optimization issues that kind of fed into again the oh yeah, Series S must be real. The Series S parity must be the problem here. That's kind of like how they said it. And then obviously Microsoft kind of mentioned the whole, yeah, we don't comment about some sort of exclusivity deals made by others. So it's like, so what really is it? Because it's like, this doesn't really fit the MO of exclusivity as Sony usually does. Because they, even like with Reverb, like they were promoting that whole thing and also making everyone know is like, oh yeah, we had this exclusive for like 3 months. Then after that, Square can do whatever they want to put it everywhere. It was like all over their trailers. You could see it like at the bottom. They kind of have been like being forced, because I kind of learned this through a YouTuber called Detective Seeds. You probably see the tweets where he mentioned that since like 2019, there was like a ruling that Sony has to like disclose every exclusivity deal as it happened. So
I don't think that's true, by the way. I talked to him about that and I didn't get really an answer. Not that he has to give me an answer, but he was implying that Sony has to publicly reveal everything about their deals with vendors, and that's not what the ruling was. And from my recollection, they just had to, like, Microsoft had to be informed of it to some degree. And you can, like, the box that Final Fantasy VII Remake came in said 6-month exclusive.
Yeah,
and that was
a year, no, 1 year. Yeah, 1 year exclusive. I remember.
Yeah, so those things, just because that's what it is at the top, at the bottom of the trailer, doesn't mean Sony's going to continuously keep paying to keep it off. So that stuff doesn't really matter to me at all. This whole Wukong situation is weird. When Microsoft says we can't comment on deals made by other parties, they would know if there was a deal because of that thing. So they would have knowledge that one exists if it does. But saying that they don't want to comment on deals doesn't mean that there is one. It's just kind of really smart, like, corporate language that creates
it's PR dodge that creates reasonable doubt, even if there is not, like, even when there is none. So it's like, because now it creates this cloud where it's like, who was lying? We got the word from Game Science being like, no, that game's coming. It's just it cannot be optimized just right now. And then that was happening. And then we had that little hearsay we heard from some people, like, we got the Forbes, the Paul Tassi saying it, then I just sort of corroborated, and then others nothing. Like, this one was one of the weirdest. Go for it. This was one of, like, the weirdest, like, exclusivity / maybe money hiding or whatever thing, or maybe optimization kind of in Wukong felt like a 3-prong, like, smorgasbord of all those three things could be true, or maybe not. But there's enough reasonable doubt that you don't really know what's happening. The only thing that we know is on console, Wukong is the only place that, like, you can only play that on PS5 on console and then play it on PC, which is basically where most of this popularity is coming from. But it's like, it was just funny seeing it in this context of everything that's been happening around that. I kind of like how that's just been like a narrative forming that, and kind of just painting the light of, like, where Xbox is now in the market, where even during the Xbox One generation, I feel like, I know it's like it's either reality or feel, but it feels worse than it was back then. I don't know, like, if you agree with me that.
No,
it's like,
I don't. I do not agree at all. We can get into that, and I think it would be cool to talk about, because I think Xbox and Sony both have problems, and they both have different problems. And I think
we're about to talk about it.
We're going to get to that. In terms of Wukong, similar to what I said about the other stuff, I'm not going to definitively say, like, what happened, because I don't know, and none of us know. What I do know, though, is that just because Sony's not, like, pimping it out doesn't mean there is not a deal. There could very easily be a deal. I think Sony has been weird with that stuff, with everything that they're doing since the FTC trial, when they got kind of exposed and had those leaks and stuff like that. They've been very weird about everything. So it's definitely, like, both things are in the realm of possibility. There being a deal and there not being a deal. The thing that really I get hung up on is that the developers have said that they can't release on Xbox because it's not meeting their what did they say? The exact word, the quality standard is the words they use, which implies that there's issues with the Xbox version. And Microsoft, the first statement they had, like, it could mean that there was a deal, it could mean that there wasn't a deal. They really didn't say anything. But the second statement, they definitively said, we can confirm there has been no, well, they kind of were vague about that in the second statement, but what they did say definitively, with no question, was that there has been 0 issues reported to us about any issues with the Xbox version. No technical problems have been reported to anyone on our side. So either one, the Wukong team has all these problems with Xbox that they can't solve, and they just decided not to reach out to literally the only people that have the answers, which I don't think is true.
Or the person lost the password, or that would have heard and the liaison with China.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
I know it was just a joke.
But or B, what I personally think, and this again is just my opinion, and there's no proof of this. What I think happened is they realized as they were getting close to launch that they can't delay because delaying is a very expensive thing to do, and they don't have enough bandwidth to get all the platforms out. And what makes the most sense is to release it on PC. The platform is going to sell them the most copies, and PlayStation, the platform is going to sell them the second most copies. And it looks a lot better on them if they say that it's Xbox's fault because of XYZ problems with the console. This is something that's already being reported on. This is something that people already feel based on Baldur's Gate, based on all this other stuff that we've been talking about. And I think it's telling, very telling, that Microsoft was very definitive about saying there has been 0 issues reported to them. And I also think it's very telling that this studio, who was very vocal about the problems that they were facing with Xbox, has said literally nothing since then. So in my opinion, I think that they bit off more than they could chew, trying to release on 3 platforms at once, realized they couldn't do it, decided to postpone the Xbox One and focus on these 2 to get 2 MVPs out the door. The PlayStation 5 version, from what I've seen on Digital Foundry, could use some work as well. So it's not even like they fully landed it anyway, even though obviously the game is great and it sold really well, but there's still work that needs to be done on the PS5 version. And you could make the argument that it would be even worse for both consoles if they spread themselves even thinner to get them all out. So what I think happened is they didn't have the bandwidth to get it done. There isn't anything about the Xbox that makes it worse or harder to develop for than the PlayStation. That's just the messaging that they decided to use because it looks better on them. It's better for me if I'm the developer to say it's their fault, not mine. I'm trying to do this, but they are not allowing me because of all the issues that they're having, but we're going to work through those issues because we're awesome and we're going to get, and I think what really happened is they just didn't have the bandwidth for it. I don't think personally, even though it is not impossible, I've seen some people saying there's absolutely no way. It is still technically possible that Sony did some weird shit, but I don't think that. I just think the most simplest answer is what I just said.
And I believe of them taking advantage of precedent, because there's already precedent. We can say it was there. People will easily believe it because that's kind of like what the beauty and the dangers of precedent. Because once that happens, you can kind of have something to kind of fall back on. That will be like short sleight of hand to get yourself out of things or do something sleazy or not sleazy, depending on whatever your current situation is there currently. To me, it's just like emblematic of just like the state of where Xbox is in 2024, where it's like they have such great content pipeline coming in. They have a great system. They have such a great ecosystem, and it's all this PR death by 1,000 cuts that it's always kind of serving as like this smoke screen to the thing. Kind of like we're always talking about, like, okay, when's the next rake step happening, or like who's the guy in charge of like dropping the bad news just as soon as we're about to get some good news, like, because it feels like it's a constant push and pull with that with this company, where this also coming on the literally on the eve of the One More Thing announcement at the Gamescom Open and Night Live, being like, oh yeah, our big exclusive that's not multi-platform for this year is like PS5 version's coming 4 months later, as like that, and that popping up in such a public forum is like, it just feels like they're down and out, even though, like, as we talk a lot, like in reality, post ABK, they're doing the best they've ever done. It's just more they created this weird murky area where it's like Xbox as a console is kind of like, feels like it's like in its twilight years, kind of like it's at the nursing home. But no, don't worry, they got like a huge amount of vitamins like they got with ABK that's gonna keep them alive forever. That's kind of, it's like perception and reality. It's just the perception of Xbox is like, damn, can they catch a break?
So what I would say to that is, and kind of to follow back up with what you said about how it feels worse for Xbox now than even back then. I think, well, first of all, I think the reason why you feel that way, and the reason why, like, I understand why you feel that way, and I kind of feel I see more negative shit now, is because both of us, I'm assuming, I'm making an assumption here, in like 2015, 16, I would say both of us are probably way more in the thick of it right now in terms of gaming discourse and Twitter, and ever since the pandemic, it's just all of the bad parts of the gaming sphere has just amplified. So
especially post Elon Musk. Yeah, and engagement farming and SEO farming for engagement and all of that is like now that feels like more that has been like more amplified. Even kind of like the same way that it feels like I know I mentioned in our Discord is like no one can deny that there's massive negative sentiment around PlayStation and the PlayStation 5 generation that sometimes is not reflected in how well that damn console is selling and doing, and how well their games are selling, how well their games are reviewing, with the exception of one we're about to talk about like after this. But it's like it's just so funny how that amplifies a message that may not that clouds the true reality. It's not
the reality. Yeah. Because I could tell you from somebody who was like, or I am an Xbox fan still, but I was like, I didn't even have a PlayStation during the dark times. And I can tell you from someone who was in that, when you have all of this negativity that was surrounding the launch with like always online, yada yada, Connect forcing paying more for less power, 1080p versus 720p, 900p, all this stuff, that's all here, and that's bad. And then Xbox is like, here's bare bones Sea of Thieves, here's State of Decay 2 that runs pretty poorly, here's Recore that's kind of a dud, and here's Crackdown 3, and then PlayStation's like, here's Spider-Man, God of War, Uncharted 4, like all of that. Xbox's problem then was they have a weaker platform, they have worse games, they have less games, and they are getting destroyed in sales, and they are not making like a lot of money, and they are their strategy of relying on 3 main IP, all 3 of them are failing, and everything else that they try to do is failing, and everything is failing. So that is way worse than right now, because right now Xbox's problem is our publishing arm is having some small indie games fall through the cracks, which shouldn't. And our strategy of the Series S and the Series X, although it worked in terms of sales, because Series S is a pretty successful device.
Yeah, it was 75-25. I think the split of like a lot of people buying Series S versus like Series X on numbers we don't even know because they don't report.
Yeah, numbers, and those Series S users, they subscribe to the services. They are generating profit for Microsoft. So that part of it worked out, but we're having some speed bumps with things like Baldur's Gate, which ultimately get resolved. And like I said, the people, like, I don't think that Baldur's Gate being on PlayStation for like 5 or 6 months or whatever it was really cost Xbox a ton of Baldur's Gate sales, because those Xbox gamers were always going to wait for it to be on Xbox anyway. So, but like, that's the problems that Microsoft has. But the other side of the coin is they have more studios than anybody else, more IP than anybody else, more games than anybody else. They're making more profit than anybody else.
Announced games on top of that.
They have a better, or bigger, I should say, roadmap than everybody else. They're making more profit than everybody else. They have more users than everybody else in terms of their whole ecosystem, that it like all encompassing. They have the best subscription service that you can buy. They have the most like exposure right now. They just owned the summer with Summer Showcase. They just owned the Europe E3. What's it? Gamescom.
Gamescom opening night live. Yeah. People were really impressed with their presence. I even saw, like, even from the harshest of critics, they were like, "Man, their presence in Europe was awesome." Like how they showed up after.
Yeah, exactly. And then Tokyo Game Show, there's rumors that some of the Square Enix stuff is starting to come over. They're gaining traction in China now with the Miiverse games like Genshin Impact coming over. They are just winning. Like, they are winning, and that's the message that's getting lost in the negativity of the discourse right now. Because at the end of the day, if you look at, and this can transition to the next topic, if you look at what Sony's problem is every single time that they try to either invest in a third-party exclusive service game or make their own service game, it is a absolute epic mega fail. I would say the 2 biggest flops of this entire generation is Babylon's Fall and Concord, which we can talk about now. I'd say the 3rd biggest flop was probably something like Godfall. Like they Godfall. Are just people look at Redfall as this huge like worst moment ever, and honestly, I think like Phil Spencer handled that with grace, and he went on and talked about it. I don't expect anyone from Sony to do the same thing for Concord. But Redfall sold like way more copies than Concord. It peaked at 11K on Steam. Keep in mind, it's free on PC Game Pass, so there's people that would have been playing on Steam if
you
it
can
wasn't
still
free on Game
and you
Pass.
can still play Redfall. And the
Yeah, you
version
can
of
still play
and the
Redfall.
Redfall you can play right now is the best version available. Not a launch, which when it was bad, but as
Yeah.
like if you heard about a bunch of the stuff about Redfall and when to play it right now, that game's been fixed. It went from like a 4 to a 7 at least. It's not bad.
It's not bad.
It's not bad anymore.
And you can still play it. And if you look at Sony, they just broke the record for like fastest game to get like pulled.
And
they're in my opinion, their flagship studio, like their golden goose, Naughty Dog, they just wasted 4 years of their development time and hundreds of millions of dollars to make a multiplayer game that was not even able to get released like Concord did. Jim Ryan apparently greenlit 12 live service games, 7 of which have been canceled, not even making it to the finish line. And I have never heard anyone talk about the 7 games that were canceled.
Yeah.
And I still hear people talking about Scalebound. So like what's a bigger fail? Scalebound, where in my opinion, Platinum Games clearly took the Microsoft money and invested into Nier Automata,
because
The Last
of Us.
or The Last of Us Online. What's a bigger fail? And I still hear about Scalebound. So it's like we don't live in the real world of what's really happening. And if I had to look at both situations, especially when you consider Sony's roadmap or lack thereof, like right now at this moment in time, and I mean it's one PlayStation showcase away from completely changing, but right now as we live and breathe, Xbox is in way better shape, and you would not know that if you just looked at Twitter. Yeah,
that's kind of like the irony. And and the thing that Sony kind of like hides themselves behind constantly is the fact that they're the market leader, because kind of like you were saying, Xbox is definitely winning in every area imaginable except console sales. And now we have also talked about the fact that it is very clear with them constantly in their earnings mentioning, oh yeah, all of this is kind of trending downwards, but look how much money we made because we got ABK. And them constantly like mentioning kind of like how much money they're making now. It's kind of like at least they know which goose is kind of like boosting them, and they kind of know where things are kind of like going downward. And because some people are still kind of stuck in that mentality or thinking of Xbox as the third console in the battle between the three. That's like the one area where they're like royally like going down and down, where the other competitors are like, at least even though less PS5s have been sold this year, it's still kind of like trending up between like a peak of the last 3. So it's like it's still like the console that when people want a console to play on, it's like that still has kind of like just become de facto now, which is where the kind of problem is. And that has helped with the fact that despite a relatively strong first 3 years of the console, it's like when thinking about, okay, why it's kind of coming afterwards, we're really starting to see all the bad decisions that happened during that Jim Ryan era, where a lot of those games during those early successful, just based on how long game development is and when those games would have been greenlit, a lot of those games would have been greenlit by Sean Layden, like the God of War sequel, the Spider-Man sequel, the Horizon sequel.
Yeah, absolutely. Like literally all of them.
All of them were like the Sean Layden era. And then the live service things that we saw announced at last year's disappointing showcase from May 23rd, 23. And since we're talking about Concord, the game that is basically dying, that by the time you hear this episode go live, you will not be able to play Concord at all. You will have, if you bought it digitally, you're gonna get a refund for that game. It's like that is a game that was greenlit and
this is Concord. This is my copy of Concord right here. Refunded onto gift cards. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like in the games that for sure kind of came in and became greenlit during this other initiative that happened during Jim Ryan's era. It's like that is abject failure in a level that is like the day this happened, and was it 2 days ago or 2 days ago when we learned this, like that they were like shutting that game off like that. On top of
ironically was the day after pretty much all of FSG spent like 4 hours straight playing and having fun.
Yes, we were like because we're always having everyone's the whole talk of the town of Concord was like, look how horrendous the Steam numbers are, look how it's like it's barely cracking the top 50 sold on PSN. And then we were all like, but it's like, other than maybe some rivalry matches, we're like matching really quickly, we're having a lot of fun. It's like, what's funny is that it's not about like compare like the quality of Concord as a game, pretty solid game. Could have used more modes, could have been cooked a little bit more in kind of like general variety and all that, but the fundamentals were solid. The game was not broken. The game was pretty polished. It was it had the Sony panache of having a lot of high fidelity and a lot of the things, even though its art design and direction was pretty generic and very in some spaces pretty off-putting. But it's like it's a game that trenches so spectacularly hard for a game that lost its luster so many years ago. Because it's like, yes, people are still playing Overwatch. Obviously, a lot of more people are playing Overwatch than were playing Concord. But it's like when we were hearing that this was a game that, at least in the concept phase, was kind of like thought about whenever Overwatch happened in 2016 and just started kind of like development in 2018, before like Sony kind of bought into the studio and kind of like bought into this whole idea of like, yes, I'm not against you getting into live service, get one of it, but then the Jim Ryan era, like, no, the roadmap is we're gonna invest in 12 live service. It's like gonna be 60% of our development, and 40% is just gonna be single player stuff, which, because it's a lesser footprint, it's just gonna be sequels to the tried and true stuff, instead of being the Sony. What made Sony, the Sony ecosystem, always exciting for me was it was always the ecosystem that would always push for the newer ideas, because that was in the DNA since PS1. It's there in PS2. Somehow, even during the dark ages of PS3, that's what the thing that DNA is what kept that console alive when it finally started hitting its stride halfway through that gen. Even the PS4 generation was like, saw a bunch of the end of those PS3 franchises to birth or rebirth some new ones in that generation. Then this generation has just been like just one new IP, which was Returnal, and then everything else was kind of like sequels, which those sequels were great. Obviously, probably the first versions of those games were probably better in some respect, maybe in story. Some of the games were mechanically better and all that, but it's like, it was just kind of like same old. But now that we're here with Concord, that was like supposed to be like, okay, a new IP based on this like new initiative that we're pursuing. This absolute catastrophic failure on top of the cancellations that they canceled 6, and then the only ones that remain like that were gonna happen were gonna be Marathon, they were gonna be Fair Games, we're gonna be Concord, and then continue support for MLB and GT. That was kind of like basically all we knew about live service, and then everything else kind of like went kaput. Because obviously Helldivers 2, which the irony of Sony this year had one of the biggest pops early in the year with Helldivers 2, like a game that a lot of people were championing, which right now at this current state is kind of floundering now, because like a typical live service that they made the wrong choice. The developer, on top of Sony doing the stupid thing with canceling a bunch of players with the PSN requirement, but then the developer kind of like nerfing, and instead of like the updates pushing gamers away from their game, because it's like they were making the game less fun. And now right now we're in that 60-day period that they said that they were kind of like rebuilding and they want to make the game more fun, kind of like floundering. It's like they got to see a lot of success early on, and now they got to see the biggest failure in the 30-year history. And here's the thing, like, if all the mistakes, the PR mistakes that Xbox has had, which they've had many, including an entire year that went completely blank for them this year, this generation in 2022, is like, what happened with Concord is like someone that was on a streak of 10 out of 10s releasing a 1 out of 10, even though it was not that bad, but it feels like that. What does that do to your average? That's how that was the giant bomb, not pun intended, I'm not talking about the website, but that was like such a gigantic bomb that you've never seen it like this, coming from the first party, a game that didn't even make it 15 days in the market before they announced they were gonna kill it and they were gonna refund you. Tell me if that's not embarrassing. Absolute embarrassment. Absolute embarrassment. That it's saved by the fact because they're market leader and they had another game waiting, literally, that's coming out tomorrow. It's like,
yeah. So I think it's actually hilarious how almost exactly 1-to-1 this whole situation with Sony is to Don Matrick.
Yes,
because Don Matrick took over for somebody who was, I wouldn't say that Peter Moore was like a gamer or like really like keyed in on what makes a good game. But what Peter Moore always did really well is he listened to people around him that were like that.
Yeah.
And there's I can't remember the name of the YouTube channel. I can send it to you and find it. But there's a woman who worked as in the publishing department with Xbox, and she would be like someone who worked with other studios to kind of like get games across the finish line. and she has a series where she talks about like her past and working with different games, and she gives some advice and stuff like this. And she had said as much that Peter Moore pretty much made no decisions on his own. Every decision that Xbox made, which ultimately came from him, was the result of him listening to everyone around him, and they were like super successful, right?
Yeah.
Jeez. And then when Don Matrick came in,
it's because for people that don't know, like Peter Moore is the reason the 360 came in a year ahead of the PS3, because they were like, they had an aggressive plan of action, and Peter Moore like really try to like learn about where the original Xbox's launch went right, what went wrong, what could they learn from that. And he was like through those learnings and kind of like a desire to be like, let's make this platform something worth it. That's kind of like it had that kind of that aggressiveness and smart way of reading what needed to happen to hit first.
He listened to developers, he got their extra RAM for Epic, he worked with Japan, he got Lost Odyssey, and like he was awesome. And the Xbox 360 was dominant. When Don Matrick came, he was very egotistical. He did not listen to people around him. He shut people out. He made decisions in an office by himself. He trend chased by looking at what the Wii was doing and invested way too much into motion controls or Kinect, which is a parallel to Jim's investment in live service. Everything that they did with Kinect pretty much failed, except for like in general the Kinect sold super well on 360, but there's no real notable games that they made for it that were like popping. And like he had epic fails as well, like Fable Legends, which is like an allegory to Concord, in my opinion. At least Concord released for 12 days. Fable Legends didn't get past its beta. And they showed that game way too long. Do you remember how long in every showcase since 2013 was like all the time Fable Legends, and then canceled. And he looked at like Left 4 Dead or Evolved, and he's like, oh, that's a cool idea and that's selling really well, we're gonna make our version of that. Just like Jim Ryan probably looked at Overwatch and said the same thing. Looked at focus groups, like it's like a new Coke situation. I'm sure you know the story of that. And then he left like ungracefully, and then Phil Spencer took over, but it took years for those like the stink of him to go away, because all the projects that he greenlit, which is Scalebound and things like this, like they had to the TV / game hybrid of Quantum Break, which didn't do well, but I actually liked that.
The game was good. The game side of Quantum Break was good. The TV show was okay.
Yeah, and do you want to know why that exists or why that pitch went through? Is because it was Xbox One, where TV, like it was just all bad. And it took a while to get rid of that, and that's similar to what's happening with Jim Ryan here. I don't believe that Jim Ryan knows anything about video games. I think he was in the executive accounting side of Sony and just stumbled and tripped and fell into this position.
Before he was CEO, he was Europe marketing head. The reason why the PS3 was like so successful during that bad generation, except Europe, was because he had a good eye on how to sell that console to the European community. So he had that, but he was always more of an exec, more of like a marketer instead of like a creative, or someone that was keen on the creative. And the way he expressed himself over games, like when people ask him, it's like, what's the recent game they're playing? I'm playing the recent new exclusive game from Insomniac Games, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Who speaks like that? Like that tells you a lot. That tells you a lot about the kind of.
Didn't he have like his headset on the wrong way too, like the Sony?
He was grabbing the controller like this, like grabbing it from me like this.
So like it's embarrassing. In terms of Concord, it's just really sad, because I think that there's no evidence of this, but in my head I'm imagining a lot of developers at Firewalk saying this is not going to work. Like we need to pivot in some ways. I think that they are rightfully proud of the final product from a technical perspective. I think that all the criticisms that people levy at the game itself, you could say the same thing about X Defiant. Oh, it needs more modes, it needs more maps. Like you could say the same thing about every live service launch. They all launch in kind of like a
beta,
MVP
but not really.
state.
Minimal viable product.
I don't buy into all that stuff. I think that once the reveal happened and it had that much negativity, and then the beta happened and they literally couldn't get enough pre-orders to fill a beta, I think that's when they needed to do what they're doing now, which is technically not canceling the game, which is just pulling it back and retooling it.
It's multiverses, basically. It's what multiverses did, even though multiverses was a little longer in the market before they pulled the plug and went away for like 2 years.
Multiverses was popping. Multiverses was doing really well, and that move that they did was not a smart move because that did not pay out for them. They lost all their hype, and so Multiverses is a game that was really well received, very popular, and then when they came back, it lost a lot of that hype, and I don't think it's doing very well right now.
And from what I understand, and from what I understood, even from avid players that played in 2022, I had my friend PJ. He was telling me the game's worse now after he came back. Like it was worse. It's like, wow, so you went out that way and like you came back in worse shape than what you were, man.
Yeah. So, and from that, looking at that, like, how is the game that nobody wanted to play going to come back and somehow, you know? So if I had the crystal ball and tell you what's going to happen with Concord, I think it's probably 50-50 that it comes back free to play, and I think they have a really, really, really steep hill to climb to not have it just be canceled again. I just don't. They have a lot of negative sentiment to kind of get over. I think it's possible. I think there's some tweaks they could do. I do think that the character designs need like they don't need to completely redo it. They don't need to listen to the crazy people that are out there, but I do think they need a second pass. If you look at a character like Roka, that character has like no personality. Her whole suit is just like a beige flat. Nothing's popping about that. Like her visor should open. Like if you compare her to Pharah in Overwatch, Pharah's like shiny, colorful, multiple layers of different colors. Her mask opens up. She speaks. She has a face that you can like attach a character to, and just more personality. And you could make comparisons with Overwatch characters from that perspective. I don't think they need to make them like hotter or any weird stuff like that. But yeah, I think that they need to double down on the things that makes Concord unique, like and make them more impactful and more kind of like mandatory to the gameplay loop, because they need to break that Overwatch comparison and they need to make the game stand out more. But the core, the bones are good.
Yes. And I feel like something that would really like help out a lot, because you could see this if you started like unlocking stuff for the characters and started getting some like the art and the character bios and all that, and you see them like in that art and like the more cell shaded art. I'm like, these designs here are really cool. And someone made like the funny the fun observation that when you looked at how those characters look like in art form versus like the fully 3D like high fidelity model, it's like watching like someone try to adapt a comic book movie and doing it like in bad cosplay. And that's kind of like but then when you look at them in the art, it was like it actually felt appealing. And I'm like, maybe something that they can do right now is they kind of go dormant, do something maybe more extreme to what Apex Legends did. I don't know if you remember that Apex Legends also kind of like tweaked its art style like around its 3rd or 4th season after like initially launching with like its how it looked. That was like, it was functional. It was working for like because what's the they work on Source Engine if I remember correctly. It's like with Apex it's like so it's a modified Source Engine, but then it's like later on like they give that game even like a more artistic like look to it that I feel is what kind of helped to kind of keep it more visually appealing and alive going forward. Maybe that could be like one thing that sells it, is like because the game, like when you look at it, it's like, is this weird 50-50? It's like, oh man, it's like it's going like for high fidelity because that's what Sony does, but it's like it's so unappealing. Maybe like making just the art style more appealing while keeping the bones in, and a different business model of how you kind of launch it. Maybe that could be like a way to try to appeal more. But man, it's like, how long will this take? Will they be given the rope for that? It's like, especially now we're under Herman Holst and Hiroki Totoki and all that, because it's like these are basically remnants from the Jim Ryan era. We're like in a different era after that kind of short window of time, where like the only good thing that you can like take away from like the Jim Ryan era would probably be the fact that he also he allowed a sequel to Astro Bot to happen, because technically like Astro Bot was greenlit for Sean Layden, and then he was like, oh yeah, because we're gonna just keep with the franchise we have right now. It's like let's greenlit stuff. Like yeah, let's give a shot to Astro Bot, despite the fact that I closed Japan Studio also, and killing a big legacy of Sony at the same time. But that's like Japan Studio is still living in Team Asoba because it's still in that same office. So there's like a, but everything else is like I have been like saying because seeing the sentiments like under Jim Ryan. We lost showcases, or we lost the consistency of showcases. We saw the worst PR of Sony where they will go in perpetual silence because it's like they were playing the inertia game. Why talk since we're doing so well? Not talking is not like hurting us, but it's like creating kind of like that vibe where I was like, I enjoy playing on PlayStation, but I don't feel happy about like supporting like you know like when you're enjoying where you're kind of playing and all that and kind of feeling like a burning passion of like I'm enjoying here because they're really earning my enjoyment. If it felt like the PS5 generation felt like a given that they're just like taking the inertia of the hard work others did in the previous generation to kind of just ride that wave, and thank God that wave is still doing it good because it's like this is the kind of thing that would sink you. It's like the PS5 was in Xbox Series in the Xbox Series situation where it was not like top of the line and all that. A failure of Concord's magnitude is like, oh, it's like I tell it's like it is nuclear. This is nuclear bomb.
Next earning report that factors in Concord is going to be interesting because they like we looked at it before. The PlayStation business definitely has the highest dollars coming in.
Yeah, but operating profit is rough.
Operating profit is it's definitely positive, but it's like I think it was like 6 or 7%.
Yeah, it increased from last year, which it was like a good because last year was when it got worrying. Because that's like when it got worrying, that's why the layout.
I think it was negative. I think it was red last year.
One
but even
year,
still,
like, one
6%
quarter,
low.
one quarter got red, and then the other ones were like positive. But that one that red was kind of like, despite the fact of everything that they were trying to do. So it's like everything's going like rosy. They are like a big business and all that, but it's like now we're like in a moment where it's like, how bad must this have been that you nuked it in less than 2 weeks? So it's like that next like we'll see like what. It's so funny. This game is dying the same time that the new Astro Bot is coming out. That's so hilarious. That's like so like it's like a soul for a soul for a soul. And compared to Concord, like Astro Bot has been given the royal treatment. The guerrilla marketing for Astro Bot has been insane. What they're doing with that game, like everywhere of the world, it's like they got the Japanese babes doing like the promotion over there in like Japan or Hong Kong. This like
do you think it's gonna sell well though?
That's kind of what I've been talking with my buddy Sebastian, the guy that Mr. Feels Bad. Those are the things that I posted in our in our chat.
I can't convince a single person I know to buy Astro Bot.
Yeah,
not one.
Yeah, which is wild. Like I've seen a lot of people, at least from my circles, that are really excited to try it. But that's what I'm wondering because it's like they're giving Astro Bot marketing, the marketing, the guerrilla marketing they did for Spider-Man 2 and God of War Ragnarok, because like that was like post-pandemic. Now PS5 supply is like really strong. Those two games really sold well, being heavily pushed. I want to see how that does. So if it can like overcome the fact that
I was gonna say I bought it. I'm hyped for it. I love Astro Bot. I just can't shake this thought that I feel like the core audience for Sony with PlayStation, which is the audience that are going to buy more than just FIFA, Madden, Call of Duty, like the people that they're basically selling their exclusive games to. I think that they have a very narrow, I don't want to say narrow because that sounds negative, but I think they have a very specific taste, and it's a taste that Sony has been feeding them for decades. And I don't think that I can't see a world where a Sony like PvP service game is going to thrive on PlayStation without being on another platform. Even PvE like Helldivers was completely carried by Steam. If that was a PlayStation exclusive, it's like a blip, I think. Even though I love the game and I played it on PlayStation, but the main like catalyst to it being like thrusted into the zeitgeist was Steam and PC players. I just think that they like single player games, and I think that Xbox definitely likes multiplayer games. I do think they're a little bit more diverse because you have titles like like Hellblade that like do okay, and like they have like Age of Empires, and Forza does really well. So they're a little bit more diverse, but they also are more, there's less people, so it's easier.
And they're still trying to train their audience, because it's like you always knew the Xbox as like the co-op machine, the one where you go and play with your buddies, and that was kind of like baked into a cake with Gears and Halo. So
that's kind of where it went down when they really only focused on that. For me, like the reason why I love Xbox, number one is obviously Halo, but other than that, the reason why I love Xbox is because there's so much variety. I'm somebody who doesn't like to only play the same games. The reason why every single time I put my PlayStation away and stop playing it for a long period of time is because I play one of those games, and then the next thing I want to play is another one of those games that I can't do.
And I've been saying that for a while, like my favorite generation for PlayStation, at least from first party, is and will remain PS3, because they had that variety. And also kind of like by necessity, they had
stuff
that variety.
Like Puppeteer and
they had that variety. It was like, it really felt like a very
esoteric.
It felt very esoteric. It felt very unique, and keeping in the spirit of how they built the brand. But that was when first party was doing it, where before it was like they were getting all the unique stuff from the third parties that left them for multi-platform, when the PS3 was like not was not hitting. Because it's like, it's kind of mentioned, it's like when they lost Final Fantasy and Devil May Cry and the original Assassin's Creed were all slated as PS3 exclusives. That was kind of like the signal wind of like, oh yeah, it's like the third parties that were giving us the content for us is not there. That they started putting the work and made all the variety. And then The Last of Us, right at the end, when the PS3 was finally like overtaking the 360 in the final year of that generation, just hit at that particular kind of like flexing point, that then they were like, let's double down on this. And it's like, when after like an entire generation of seeing that and continuing, it's like, it feels less special to me, despite the fact that people are still like buying those games. The media that reviews the game still like review them pretty highly, because it's like, whether disliking the taste or not, it's like, at the very least there's a baseline of quality to those single player experiences that is still there. It's just like less excited. Like, I was much less pumped for a Spider-Man 2 than I was when Spider-Man 1 came out, because it felt more like a given. And also on top of the fact that when then you started seeing that game and being like, oh, I'm recognizing this section, it's clearly inspired by Uncharted 4. And then when I was playing the Last of Us Part 2 Remaster for review, and I was doing the cut content that they added for that game, and it started seeing they had a carnival section. I'm like, Jesus Christ. So it was like, we're gonna have a carnival here, and also in the Coney Island section of Spider-Man 2. Like, come on. It's like at a certain point just becomes too blatant of like it's just doing the same kind of game, like while painted differently and everyone having like one unique different mechanic, but you could like break it down. Where it's like, that's why I wanted Concord to succeed in that. At least it was a first FPS. It just sucks that the kind of FPS that it was, and in the market that it got put on, and the business model that it put on, was like, it was everything, and like everything possible for it to fail. And that's why I'm hoping, going back to the Astro Bot thing, that is like, because Sony's at least giving it the royal treatment, I am at least hoping that there's a lot of people online that have been like, Sony, we want more variety. We would like the return for the platformer like it used to be with Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank and Sly Cooper, where Ratchet and Clank is the only thing that still remains relevant, and they only put one out every 5 to 9 years based on like timelines. It's like, this is the time to put up or shut up. I am hoping, based on platinum completions that I've seen online, of like how many people actually got the platinum trophy or did all the trophies of like completing Playroom, that enough people played it that it at least could sell a bit. And knowing that 65 people developing in like 3 years, that's pretty cheap, all things considered. So it's like it's not like for example, that they needed like Spider-Man 2 to sell about 8 million copies to break even before they would start like breaking profit. It's like, that's not that's very highly expensive, not sustainable. And they even said it in the last report that it's like, it's like, we have to tighten the belts here because it's getting out of control. I'm hoping, because it's like, they like Concord failing this spectacularly, and Astro Bot, a more unique thing, doing so well already. They're having 94 Metacritic score, which is like, this is finally a game that finally beat Rebirth in Metacritic. Rebirth has been like top of the like for a game release, because obviously Eric Tree was DLC, but like for a game release, Rebirth has been like #1 all year. And now
is Eric Tree even 94 though?
It's a 95. Like Eric Tree was a 95, so Eric Tree is still the highest rated thing of the year. It's just not the highest rated game of the year. Like Rebirth was like a game, a physical game, or like that you could buy, like in Soul. Like Rebirth was like top of the lineup for so long, and now we got Astro Bot finally being like the thing that overtook it. So it's like, Now they got the front runner, at least in reviews, so like game of the year, like the same week that they had their biggest disaster ever. Do you see a picture of like someone put? I think it was Paul Tassi that posted. Is like the two pictures of Jack Black. The one for the Minecraft. No. He put it as like this week was this two extremes for Sony. It was one was Jack Black in the Minecraft movie that looks so hideous and so hilariously like awful.
I think that movie looks great though. I'm hyped for it.
The thing is that it looks awful enough that it can be like fun. I can be like schlocky like that, especially when you have the actors you have. But then it's like they put the picture of Jack Black from School of Rock, like all rocking, when it's like, oh yeah, and they've got all the critics on their side of it. And that's the thing. There's been groundswell support from critics for Astro Bot since Playroom. So I never doubted it was gonna do well. Now the thing that I'm hoping, crossing fingers, is that it does well in the market.
If it wins Game of the Year, I think that will help. I don't think that what's that game? It Takes Two.
It Takes Two.
I don't think that game sold a metric ton initially.
Yeah.
But it had a long tail, and once it won Game of the Year, it just blew up.
Yes.
And hopefully that can happen with Astro Bot. But like back to the service game, I think that Sony really needs to consider releasing those games on Xbox.
Yeah.
Because I think that the audience is going to be more receptive of a game like that, and I think it makes what is the gain of not doing it?
Yeah.
Who on Xbox is like, shit, man, I really want to play Concord, this brand new game I've never heard of. I might sell my console and get a PS5 now. That's not happening. It's not happening.
It's a good thing they would Marathon
play it,
which is supposed to be.
But Marathon's coming to Xbox.
Yes, exactly. It's a good thing to have Marathon that is gonna be that. Maybe that was the reason they wanted to test. What if we just put this on our console and PC? Oh yeah, Marathon right now is like, especially with them losing Chris Barrett or him being like inappropriate to the female employees. Of course, it would happen. From that era, the people that came from that era, Bungie, looking at you, Mr. Mario O'Donnell, in your recent spiels. But it's like, at least I wonder, like, they can see that. I would hope. Obviously, right now, Marathon, there's a lot that it's very dubious about what can happen for that game. But that's technically maybe not by choice, but by the fact of how they had Bungie set things up. That they were like, yeah, this is going to be like a multi-platform live service. Kind of like how we had been doing Destiny. Maybe that's the one that they keep and they see good data. And the data then, like, pinpoints that anything they want to do live service goes everywhere. That could be a thing.
Yeah, that's what Xbox is going to do, and Xbox is going to continue to make tons and tons of money doing it without losing really much of a footprint.
And they had to take advantage of the fact that they still have the largest console footprint. And why would it hurt you to get more from like for putting it in Xbox, even if it's a tiny bit? It's still like at least we were talking about it. It's like, despite the disproportionate size of who has more consoles on that, when you think about the multiplayer games and you actually look at the data of who is playing who, it's not an astronomical difference as you would be led to believe.
Because Sony's winning because they have the casuals. Like that's the bulk of the gap between the sales.
The college football people, the FIFA people, the NBA people, the Call of Duty people.
The core, which again, in my definition, is the people that buy the games that aren't those games, the people that buy the games that you make, Sony, other than maybe MLB. Those people, it's not like, there's definitely more of them, but it's not that different. If you look at something like Apex, like I showed you, there's gonna be like 30,000 people playing ranked Apex on PlayStation and like 25,000 playing on Xbox, and there's like 3 times as many total users on PlayStation.
Exactly.
But those numbers are so close because people just play where they want to play, and like I think that is lost on some people, how like valid that is, and like that's where gaming is going, and people want it to be like this box versus that box, which is like not really a thing anymore. But people don't care about like where the games are. They just care about the games. They don't care about where they are, you know what I mean? So they just want to be able to play it wherever they want to. And Xbox, you can make the argument that they were forced into this path, which is totally valid, but they, regardless of how they got on this path, they are on the right path. in terms of profit, like path to profitability, which ultimately is all of their goals.
And I want them to stay there, because I would hate because imagine if the ABK deal had not happened, then they were like on the way to be the next Sega. They were on their way to be the next like 3.0, because the numbers had been going down, even with the things that were ostensibly supposed to help them. Like when Starfield didn't move the needle like it was supposed to, as it was like positioned, it's like that's when we knew that ABK, at least like to increase like Starfield didn't increase and neither Game Pass like subscriptions, even though it sold a lot. Yeah, like let's remember there's different like measures to success. A lot of people played, a lot of people bought it on Steam, but at least for like Xbox, it's being positioned as the Xbox thing. Like console sales didn't like improve, neither did Game Pass, but they got a lot of footprint still like on PC and all that, which kind of like painted what we're seeing now, how they're looking at things, because where they're getting buttresses on, like putting everything in everywhere else after they got ABK. So that was kind of like, I think that was like where the die was cast a little bit for them. So, and I would rather that, because this is what allows them to at least keep the hardware going as I can, because that's the thing. I own the Series X. I'm still like, I'm pumped to play the games that are gonna go elsewhere first here. And if I like them enough, I'll rebuy them for a platinum trophy, because I'm a lunatic. I did that for Hi-Fi Rush, but there's still value to that. Like obviously, buying is a little harder when it's like kind of you were saying, the consoles are not getting cheaper. The consoles have just gotten more expensive in so many places. So definitely, like a lot of people hearing, oh, if I wait a little bit, I'll get this game. And possibly, especially with the PS5 Pro, now that we got smells of it like being sort of announced today, maybe by accident or not, who knows, that maybe like the place to play the third-party games and all that, then people know, oh yeah, I could play this on Xbox or on PC now, or like if I want to play on console, if it's just for like a 4-month wait, I'll wait. They're kind of there. I like, at least I bought it when I did, and I'll play it first. Like for all intents and purposes, it's still they're still pretty solid games when it shows up there. So I still have value for Max, because I want that to keep there even with the damn price hike for Game Pass. That's put me more in a month-to-month thing. So.
Yeah, making them exclusive is not really gaining you sales of your console. You're not adding users. You're just losing sales to other people that would buy it on their platform. Yeah, and like, I don't know. I think that we need to disconnect the kind of discussions that are happening on like places like Twitter, because they're not real. That's not real.
Yeah, it's not real life.
That's not a reflection of reality. I'd like, you had mentioned it earlier, and I won't dive too deep into this because I know we're coming up on time, but like the Indiana Jones PS5 reveal, that was the most hyped moment of, I bet you, that entire showcase. Yeah, because Xbox is in Europe, where they're getting destroyed in sales. Everybody watching that show, everybody in live there, are all PlayStation gamers who just saw Indiana Jones, which in my opinion was the best looking game of the show,
and my most anticipated game after Astro Bot this year. And
and it had the best demo. It was a long piece. It was a meaty demo. It was really cool looking, and all these people are watching this saying, this is awesome, I can't play it though, and then they get hit with, you can play it. That's the biggest moment. And people have to, I just think it's so cringe that people are like, oh, it ruined it, or it took all the hype away. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that more people being able to play it is like somehow makes it worse.
And you'll still play it first.
And you know what, if you're yeah, exactly, but if you're a PlayStation gamer, like if you didn't have your Xbox, right, and you only had PlayStation, you only played on PlayStation, and you look at that video game trailer or demo and you think it's good, which I think you do think it's good, and then you find out that you can play it, are you going to be pissed that you have to wait 6 months, or are you just going to be super hyped that you actually get to play it in general?
Yeah, and I feel a lot of people have felt like that. I feel the Sea of Thieves thing really showed that, like, a lot of people showed up for Sea of Thieves. Them selling 1 million copies of a game that was 6 years old says a lot. Like that, there's still like kind of like wait.
Just imagine if Halo came over, like it would be ridiculous. And it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, if Sony has a showcase tomorrow and they're like, oh, by the way,
here's the rest of the generation.
We are doing God of War 3 or God of War Ragnarok, or like the third game in that new arc. Okay, we're doing that. It comes out 2025, fall 2025, but spring 2026 is coming to Xbox. Do you know how hyped I would be, and do you know how little I would care about that 6-month gap?
Yeah, because it's just like it's something weird and interesting. Be like, this is so weird. It's like
a lot of people just have one box, and they would buy it, the game, but they just like, it's a lot easier to convince them to give you $70 than it is to give.
And I think it's also, and it's much easier for Xbox to do this transition because they've always been historically the software company. under Satya Nadella, they're all about the software everywhere. So it's like it's very clear that that ethos has finally like entered the Xbox ecosystem. And look, if the numbers are what they are, the Xbox ecosystem is going to survive. It's still like for the people that invested in that ecosystem and all that, is like maybe because of all the things that they spent to get the ABK and all that, is this is the way that it happens. It's like, hey, there's still some value there. That's the thing. Like that's what people have to remember. Is like, yes, you lose the value of the console war if you care about that childish thing. But if you really care about like the fact of game access and all that, it's like there's still value on Xbox. There really is. I still get value out of it, and I really love whenever they start including games that suddenly I was like, oh, they added that. Oh, I'm gonna check that out. There's still some value there that is still not there. I feel there's still value there. It's just that don't let the narrative be like controlling like the tribalism of I have more here and all that, because it's like then you start getting into the weeds, and then one clearly is like beating you in some way. So it's like you might as well just look at the value proposition. And I feel like this is the time where there's still value owning all three. It's just that one just cannot win the PR battle, but don't let that ruin it for you. Basically, that's kind of like I feel how they you have to.
The PR battle happens in this tiny bubble on Twitter, by the way. So the PR battle is not even a battle. It's just like
exactly
this tiny thing that no one even knows is happening except for nerds like us.
Yeah, and the only thing that you should care is that your games be and your consoles and like be successful enough that you can get like the money for those things to keep on going. That's kind of like that's the thing I see it as. Like I want everyone to like do well, and I want like Xbox to do well still for the fact that now we know what would happen if like an uncontested Sony, like how they would act. It's like you don't want an uncontested like winner also. If this is what keeps you like in the race, and then to eventually put you in a position where then things everything changes, or kind of like the expectation change, and the other one's like the shoes in the other foot, and one already has kind of like a head start. That could also happen. So it's like you want all these things to be like good. You absolutely want to, because otherwise, because competition is like what makes everything good. Competition is what made PS3 what it was. Competition is what made the PS4 what it was, because they fought hard.
It's funny. It made it what it like lack of it made it what it was originally, and then the impact of the competition made it like turn into what it became. So PS3, you see both sides of what it can be and what it could be as well.
Exactly. So that's what you want competition always, and that's gonna the thing that saddens me as much as it saddens me that this Concord thing happened. I'm glad that this happened kind of like as a nuclear bomb, because now they're in a position where they have to prove something. Obviously they got Astro Bot going, but the loss of Concord is gonna be felt for a while, because that's still like you had like in the word, you had a first party game that you canceled 11 days after you launched it. That's something that you don't easily like recover from, no matter how amazing your 94 Metacritic looks for Astro Bot. That's the thing. Like it's still like I'm glad that this happened, because like when that kind of thing happens, then it means they will have to prove something, which tells me they'll finally talk and we'll finally hear something. So
just wait till Secret Level comes out in December. People are like, what's this game?
Yeah, what this Concord episode about? That's still so hilarious. They put the cart so before the horse for this. No, man, it's like what a catastrophic like level of planning. But hey, Herman Holst, you got work to do now. Because that was so funny. The people were like, the one that bought the studio, like to make that decision was not Herman. That was Jim Ryan's call to buy that studio. Like Herman said that they were partnering with that studio, because they've done that before. The second party kind of like, hey, let's try this, and then they had to buy in, and now they had to take that loss.
Well, Jim saw that Microsoft was doing all these acquisitions, and he's like, well, I'll do it too then, because that's how my brain works. I don't actually think things through. I just look at what other people do, or and just try to ape it. And
what are the studios that are what are the studios that are giving them the headache? The people that they bought kind of like willy-nilly. Let's see what happens with Haven. So with Fur Games, which I have no hope for. So Eric,
there's been reports that says that there's people. I've seen a report that came out today that said that
they're confident
that internally it's confident, but I mean they said the same exact things about Concord. So
Concord was an amazingly like fresh idea for that guy. We can't wait to share for PlayStation Studios. That's what Herman Hall said back in 2021. So maybe it felt like that back then, and then they realized they missed the boat like for like 3 years. So maybe they should have seen like the reception of Overwatch 2 to be like, oh fuck, like that's not where the market is now. But so Eric, to round us out, I'm gonna read us the game releases for the week of September 8th to September 14th. So we got Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 coming to PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S on September 9th, fun fact, you can play that game right now for early access. You pay for the slightly more expensive or the more expensive edition.
Gold edition.
The gold edition? Okay, yeah, you can play that now. I've been looking at videos of that thing. That looks hot. I think you put your pre-order for that one, right?
I tried to pre-order the gold edition like in July or June. It was sold out in Canada everywhere. But I used my Concord refund to pre-order the regular edition, which I'll get on Monday. I think it's Monday.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see how long Sony refunds me for my digital Concord, and then I'm gonna put the money for that because I was gonna review Warhammer, but it was gonna depend on code, and that didn't happen. So we'll see what happens there. But then we got also Jars Rising coming to PC, PS4, and 5, Switch, and Xbox Series X and S on September 10th. We got Vampire the Masquerade Reckoning of New York coming to PS4, PC, Switch, and Xbox One on September 10th. We got Rugrats Adventures in Gameland coming to PC, PS4, PS5, Switch, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S on September 10th. Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crop on PS5, PC, Series X and S on September 12th. And Funko Fusion on PC, PS4, 5, Switch, Xbox One, Series X and S. Nope. I already said PCs on September 13th. So out of all this, it's Warhammer basically, and I'm already basically well fed for the rest of September with my rotation, with my Visions of Mana.
I was actually planning on buying nothing. I was planning on buying nothing in September, and I was gonna buy War Within and Concord, and then have like a buffer in September, and then buy Avowed in October, because that's when I thought it was coming, and then Avowed got canceled, Concord got refunded, and now I bought Astro Bot and Warhammer. And I actually, this is stupid of me, but the Steelbook edition of SMT5 Vengeance went on sale, and I noticed it started selling out at some retailers, so I wanted to get that. And then I went and got the PlayStation 5 version, and I was like, and then I found out that the other Best Buy on the other side of town had the Xbox one, and I was like, oh shit, which one do I want? And then I just bought the Xbox one so it wouldn't sell out, and then now I have both, and I had to pick which one to return.
So hey, at least there's still, I would say, like especially if you are such a big physical collector and you're still like trying to keep the dream alive for Xbox. If you see anyone giving you an Xbox version of that, like if you're still trying to like keep that alive, I say get that, because at the end of the day, it's like no,
that's where I'm leaning.
It's like
my brain is really dumb. Like I'm like, oh, but I have SMT 3 Nocturne remastered on PS4.
Ooh, yeah. So you like keeping your collections kind of like even on the shelf and next to each other.
But like I have Persona 5 Steelbook sealed on both now, because I did this exact same thing and couldn't make up my mind, and now I have both.
And you always have I always kind of see it as a, hey, I'll get the trophies of this, and if I want, I'll get achievements. That's kind of like what I did with Jedi Survivor this year when it came to Game Pass. I was like, I got the platinum last year, but I kind of want to replay it. I'm gonna play the Series X version, and I played it. I was like, why is the Series X version like still so fucked? Like there's audio cutting that was not there in PS5. I remember.
I gotta try that, because my friend beat it and he never complained about anything. So
I heard it was a recent patch. I heard it was recent. It wasn't it didn't used to be like that. So it was like I actually went online. I was like, oh man. And I recently reinstalled the Jedi Survivor after I did Outlaws, because I was like, I wanted to feel which game do I really like more, and I feel there's things to like about both those games. And the PS5 version didn't cut at all in the audio, like in the same areas that it was cutting in between transitions to cutscenes. So that's why I was like, that's weird. Why is this happening like a year in release? But that's besides the point. So Eric, that brings us to the conclusion of this week's episode of the X-Bot. Where can people find you?
Sorry, you can find me on Twitter at GamePositiveYT. YouTube is the same, GamePositiveYT. I have a new episode of my podcast that just came out. There's a video version on YouTube, or you can find it on podcast services, where I talk in more depth, I guess, about the state of Xbox and like what's going on there. It was my first episode kind of back in a long time, and I feel good about it. Got some okay feedback on it. If you want to check it out, I would really appreciate it. I have a new one coming. I doubt that it will be out before this one comes out, so I guess look forward to that in the near future. And you can find me at @A_Duro on Twitter /X, at Alejandro Segovia 93 on Instagram /Threads, and then you can find my written content, the old one, at thecriticalcorner.com, and my newer content over at seasongaming.com, where you can read my reviews for this year for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, Skull and Bones, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Final Fantasy 16 The Rising Tide, the garbage TMNT arcade mutant game that I always forget its full name, but that's how much I don't care about it, the Stellar Blade, and Star Wars Outlaws. We'll see what my next review will be.
So Eric, thank you so much for joining me, coming in kind of like a clutch when we're just chatting, be like, hey, want to do recording this week? So,
yeah, no problem.
yes, and I'll see you for the next one. And in our endless chats we have over at SG and whenever we play online. And everyone else, hope you enjoy. Now that school is in session, I feel sorry for your kiddos that are still there in school. The fall is here, but lots of games still happening. What a dry year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that, I will always clown those takes. If everyone's saying that this is a dry year, I'm like, go take a hike. Because like you're not a fan of games, or you're not willing to like expand your horizons. You think this is a dry year. Maybe more say these games, or there are a lot of them, are not for me. That is a reasonable and 100% valid take, because everyone has different tastes. Just don't say dry year. Maybe it's dry year for you on what you want. So.
I think that the big hitters that we've seen so far, and what I think will be big hitters at the end of the year, I think it's very varied genre wise, and I think it's been an awesome year.
Yeah, and I'm glad that there's no runaway. It's like I was laughing at hearing other outlets be like, "What if there's no runaway like game of the year?" We don't know. It's like, is that a problem? Like, you can actually then look for the merit. Look for the merit.
They're so different
games, and they're so different. That's why it's like
you're not comparing Red Dead 2 versus God of War, right? Two like very similar games. It's like, what does Balatro, Helldivers, Rebirth, Wukong, Astro Bot, and Indiana Jones have in common?
Exactly. And here's hoping that Indiana Jones is gonna be in that conversation. I'm crossing fingers.
I'm making that happen.
Yes, I'm like this because it's Riddick. It's like the bones of Riddick are there, and Riddick was an amazing Xbox game. So.
I love every game they've done except for the one I never played, which I won't even mention.
Youngblood.
Yeah, that was a collaboration.
Yes, with Arcane. So I blame it more on Arcane more than
I got
more
than
machine games.
Toy up there, the collector's edition for 2. Oh, yes. I love that game.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like I'm more excited for games where you have to like argue and like, and because these are all great games. It's like I hate the runaway because it makes it, I feel people want their one runaway game because they just don't want to argue over a game of the year. I think that's what people are saying that, but I'm like, no, it's like I much rather this. Like I'd rather this in a 2021 where it was like slim pickings. We were barely having anything. Now we're like feasting, where we cannot buy everything. It feels like so yeah. So Eric, thank you again so much. Everyone else, thank you so much. If you like this episode, let us give us a like, give us a subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know what you liked or what you didn't like. And I'll definitely see you next week when Paul comes back, and or whenever Eric comes back again in the future, because I know I can rely on him out there. Yeah. So, and you let me know, Eric, when you need me over for yours.
Yeah, definitely soon.
Yeah, and for your like 25-cent show, okay, the one you were mentioning.
So, insert coin. Yeah,
the insert coin, that would be a fun one, because I've been like waiting for you to tell me it's ready to kind of.
Yeah, it's surprisingly hard to get those transition thing. Maybe I can just ditch them, but I think they're cool. Actually, I haven't honestly heard anybody really say that they thought that they were as cool as I thought they were. So maybe I should, but I don't know. I kind of like them.
Yeah, we'll see them. But yeah, until next time, people, enjoy games, enjoy the almost start to the fall. I hope you all had a great Labor Day vacation for those that celebrate. I don't. Our Labor Day is on May 1st, and press X to play. So,
see you later.
See you later. Hasta la vista, baby.